poor waitress hugged a mafia boss in a restaurant. He said, "Wait, you're now the mother of my child." The restaurant fell silent the moment she wrapped her arms around him. A waitress, exhausted after a 16-hour shift, embracing the most feared man in the city. His bodyguards half rose from their seats, hands reaching beneath their jackets. Time seemed to freeze as Vincent Castellano, the man whose name was whispered in shadows, looked up at Lucia with an expression of complete shock. "I'm so sorry," she stammered, stepping back. "That was completely inappropriate." "Wait." His voice cut through the air, commanding and certain. His eyes never left hers as he said the words that would change everything. "You're now the mother of my child." What if one moment of compassion could bridge two worlds that were never meant to meet? What would you do if your instinct to comfort another human being led to an offer that could solve all your problems, but potentially cost you everything else? Have you ever followed your heart when every rational thought screamed against it? That's the choice Lucia Reyes faced when she hugged a mafia boss who just revealed that his son's mother had died. My name is Serafina, and today I'm sharing a story about how an unexpected act of kindness created a connection that defied all logic and expectation. If you believe compassion can transform lives in the most surprising ways, give this video a like and join me as we discover how a simple hug changed 3 lives forever. The weight of exhaustion pressed down on Lucia's shoulders as she balanced 3 steaming plates along her forearm. 16 hours into a double shift, her feet screamed for relief, but the alternative, not making rent, screamed louder. The elegant lighting of Bella Notte, designed to flatter wealthy patrons, did little to disguise the shadows beneath her eyes. "Table 7 needs more wine," Marco, the floor manager, murmured as he passed. "And try smiling, Lucia. The gentlemen their tips generously when pleased." Lucia nodded, summoning a professional mask that hid her exhaustion. Table 7 had been the subject of whispered conversations among the staff all evening. Not just because of the 2 men watching vigilantly from a nearby table, clearly bodyguards, but because everyone recognized Vincent Castellano, whose business dealings controlled half the city's waterfront and whose name made even police officers speak in hushed tones. As she approached with his carbonara, she noticed something unexpected. Despite his reputation, Vincent Castellano looked lost. His phone lay face down beside untouched silverware. The expensive wine in his glass remained undisturbed. His normally imposing presence seemed diminished, shoulders slightly hunched beneath his perfectly tailored suit. "Is everything all right with your meal, sir?" she asked automatically, setting down the fresh plate. Vincent looked up, his piercing gray eyes meeting hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. Not with fear, but with recognition of something raw and human beneath his carefully controlled exterior. "It's perfect," he said softly. Then, after a pause that felt heavier than it should have, "My son's mother died today." The words hung between them, stark and unexpected in the refined atmosphere. Lucia's practiced customer service smile faltered. In its place rose an instinct that had nothing to do with tips or professional courtesy, pure human compassion. "I'm so sorry," she whispered, momentarily forgetting who this man was supposed to be. His expression tightened, jaw clenching against emotion he clearly wasn't accustomed to showing. "He's 5. Antonio. Hasn't seen his mother in 2 years, her choice. Now I have to tell him she's never coming back." Lucia shouldn't have cared. This man's world existed galaxies away from her struggle to pay tuition bills and keep her grandmother in assisted living. Yet something in his voice, not the powerful crime boss, but the father facing an impossible conversation, reached beyond their separate universes. "My father died when I was 6, she said before she could stop herself. What helped most wasn't what people said. It was just having someone hold on to me when everything felt like it was falling apart." Vincent's gaze sharpened, studying her with sudden intensity. "What's your name?" "Lucia." "Lucia," he repeated, as if testing the sound of it. "Thank you." She should have nodded professionally and continued her rounds. Instead, witnessing his struggle between composure and grief, Lucia followed her heart instead of her head. She reached out and embraced him, a brief, human gesture of comfort to another person in pain. The hug lasted only seconds before she realized her catastrophic breach of professional boundaries. She stepped back immediately, apologies already forming on her lips. But Vincent Castellano remained motionless, staring up at her with an expression that transformed from shock to something calculating and decisive. "Wait," he said, raising his hand in a gesture that silenced her instantly. "You're now the mother of my child." The restaurant seemed to fade around them, conversations dimming as blood rushed in Lucia's ears. "Excuse me? Antonio needs a mother. You understand loss. You're kind." His voice had changed, resuming the authority that had built his empire. "That's more than the women in my circle offer." "You can't be serious," she whispered, acutely aware of staring patrons and his watchful bodyguards. "You don't know anything about me." "I know enough." He removed a business card from his jacket, writing something on the back before handing it to her. "Come to this address tomorrow at 10 a.m. We'll discuss terms." Terms? Lucia couldn't process what was happening. "I'm not for sale." Vincent's expression softened unexpectedly. "Not buying you, Lucia. Offering you an opportunity. My son deserves a mother who hugs strangers in pain rather than one who sees him as a path to my fortune." Before she could form a coherent response, Vincent stood, placed $500 bills under his barely touched wine glass, and walked out, bodyguards flanking him like shadows. Lucia stood frozen, the card burning between her fingers, her manager's questioning gaze boring into her back. "What just happened?" Marco demanded, appearing at her elbow. "What did you say to him?" "Nothing," she managed, still staring at the door through which Vincent had disappeared. I was just being kind." Marco's eyes widened at the cash left behind. Whatever it was, he appreciated it. "That tip is more than you make in a week." The rest of her shift passed in a blur. Lucia moved mechanically between tables, her mind replaying those bizarre moments on endless loop. By closing time, her practical nature had reasserted itself. She wouldn't go. Couldn't go. The whole encounter was absurd, dangerous even. People like Vincent Castellano didn't simply offer opportunities without expecting something in return. Yet as she trudged up 4 flights to her cramped apartment, the business card still clutched in her hand, doubt crept in. Her roommates were already asleep, sparing her explanations about her distracted state. In the privacy of her tiny bedroom, she finally examined the card properly. One side bore Vincent's name and Castellano Enterprises in elegant embossing. On the back, written in precise handwriting, was an address in Westbrook Heights, the city's most exclusive neighborhood, and tomorrow's date with 10 a.m. underlined twice. Lucia sank onto her bed, the day's exhaustion hitting her full force. Tomorrow was her only day off this week. She'd planned to visit her grandmother, then work on her thesis, chipping away at the master's degree that perpetually seemed just out of reach as financial reality kept interfering. Her phone buzzed with an email notification. Opening it, she felt her stomach drop. Riverside Care Facility was giving her final notice. Her grandmother would be transferred to state facilities in 2 weeks unless the outstanding balance was paid in full. Tears of frustration burned behind her eyes. 3 jobs, waitressing, tutoring, and weekend administrative work, and still she couldn't keep ahead of the bills. Her education stretched further into the distance with each passing semester as she took fewer credits to work more hours. And now, a business card with an address that might lead to answers, or to more trouble than she could imagine. "This is insane," she whispered to her empty room. Yet as sleep finally claimed her, the card remained on her nightstand, possibility humming from its simple presence. Morning sunlight illuminated the cracked ceiling of Lucia's bedroom as she stared at the business card. Sleep had brought no clarity. A sensible person would throw it away. A sensible person wouldn't even consider visiting the home of a man whose name made hardened police officers nervous. But sensible people probably didn't have grandmothers about to be transferred to underfunded state facilities. Sensible people could probably pay their rent without working 16-hour shifts. Just hear what he has to say, she whispered to herself, the decision forming even as she recognized its foolishness. Then walk away. The brownstone stood imposing against the clear autumn sky, its limestone facade speaking of old money and quiet power. Nothing like the cramped apartment Lucia shared with 2 nursing students in the city's forgotten edges. She checked the address 3 times, each confirmation sending another flutter of anxiety through her chest. Her sensible blue dress, the nicest thing she owned, suddenly felt woefully inadequate. She shouldn't have come. Every rational thought screamed against it. Yet here she was, climbing stairs that felt like a threshold between worlds, the business card crumpled from hours of indecision. The door opened before she knocked. An older woman with silver-streaked hair and sharp eyes appraised her silently before stepping aside. He's expecting you. The interior breathed understated luxury, hardwood floors, artwork that even Lucia's untrained eye recognized as valuable, photographs in simple frames. She followed the housekeeper through a sunlit corridor into a study where Vincent Castellano stood by floor-to-ceiling windows. You came, he said, turning. In daylight, away from the restaurant's dramatic shadows, he looked more human. Still dangerous, still commanding, but with faint lines of exhaustion etched around his eyes. I came to say this is impossible, Lucia replied, summoning courage she hadn't known she possessed. Whatever you're proposing, I'm not qualified. I'm working my way through graduate school. I'm nobody. Nobody? Vincent raised an eyebrow. Lucia Reyes, 26. Double major in education and psychology from state. Currently pursuing a master's in child development while supporting your grandmother in Riverside Care Facility. Volunteer literacy tutor at Hayes Community Center. Hardly nobody. Cold fear replaced her nervousness. You investigated me? In one night? I'm thorough about who comes near my son. He gestured to the leather chair across from his desk. Please, sit. I'm not what the papers paint me to be. A criminal? The word escaped before she could censor it. A businessman with complicated interests, he corrected without heat. But that's not relevant to why you're here. Which remains unclear, Lucia said, remaining standing. I'm a waitress who showed basic human decency, not Mary Poppins. The study door opened before Vincent could respond. A small figure darted in, all boundless energy and untied shoelaces. Antonio Castellano had his father's strong features softened by childhood roundness and solemn dark eyes that seemed older than his 5 years. Papa, Mrs. Elena says I can't bring Rex to dinner, but you said, he stopped, noticing Lucia. Wariness instantly replaced animation, his small body angling protectively toward his father. Antonio, this is Miss Lucia, Vincent said, his voice gentling in a way that transformed him. She's going to have lunch with us today. The boy's scrutiny was unsettlingly thorough. Why? Vincent glanced at Lucia with unexpected humor. An excellent question. Something in that exchange, the normalcy of it, the glimpse of genuine fatherly affection, shifted something in Lucia's perception. The feared Vincent Castellano kneeling to his son's eye level, patiently explaining a guest's presence, was difficult to reconcile with the shadow king of the waterfront. Because, Lucia found herself saying, kneeling beside Vincent, your father and I were thinking you might help me with a problem. I'm studying how children learn, and I need an expert to show me what books are best for 5-year-olds. Antonio's suspicion wavered, intrigue replacing caution. I have 53 books. And I can read most of them myself. 53? That's impressive. Her response was genuine, educational instincts engaging despite her reservations. Maybe you could show me your favorites after lunch? The child's tentative nod was directed more at his shoes than at her, but it was progress. Vincent straightened, a silent communication passing between them as Antonio was ushered back to the housekeeper. You're good with him, Vincent observed once they were alone. He doesn't warm to people easily since Sophia left. I'm not agreeing to anything, Lucia clarified. I came because... She paused, realizing she didn't fully understand her own reasons. Because whatever game this is, it involves a child who deserves better than being a pawn. Vincent's expression darkened momentarily, then cleared with apparent decision. He moved to a small safe hidden behind a painting, removing a manila folder that he handed to her. Not a game, Lucia. A proposal. Everything's detailed here: salary, expectations, living arrangements. In essence, I'm offering you a position as Antonio's live-in guardian and mentor. You'd complete your education, fully funded, while providing him the maternal guidance he needs. Lucia stared at the folder, not opening it. Why me? You could hire a professional nanny with decades of experience. Antonio doesn't need another employee. He needs someone who sees people, not positions or potential advantages. Vincent's gaze held hers, unexpectedly earnest. Someone whose first instinct is to offer comfort rather than calculate benefit. That's not enough reason to upend his life. Or mine. Perhaps not, he conceded. But consider this, you're drowning in student loans. Your grandmother's care facility is threatening to transfer her to state facilities because you're 3 months behind on payments. Meanwhile, I have resources but cannot give my son what he most needs, a normal childhood with emotional security. The precision of his knowledge about her circumstances made her fingers tremble slightly as she finally opened the folder. Inside lay a contract outlining a role that seemed tailored specifically for her, educational consultant and caregiver for Antonio Castellano. The salary figure made her breath catch, more than 5 times what she currently earned across all 3 jobs combined. A separate document detailed arrangements for her grandmother's care, transferring her to an exclusive facility with private nursing. This is overwhelming, she managed, unable to fully process what she was seeing. But children aren't business deals, Mr. Castellano. Vincent, he corrected. And no, they're not. Which is precisely why I'm not approaching this like a business deal. I'm approaching it as a father who recognizes what his son needs. You barely know me. I know what matters. You could have ignored me in that restaurant, most would have. Instead, you saw a person in pain and responded with genuine compassion. His voice lowered. Do you know how rare that is in my world, Lucia? Everyone wants something from me. Everyone has an angle. You're the first person in years who touched me without wanting power or money in return. Lunch was served in a sun-drenched conservatory, Antonio seated between them at a round table laden with food that made Bellinate's finest offerings seem pedestrian. The boy remained cautious but curious, his eyes constantly darting between Lucia and his father. Do you like dinosaurs? He asked suddenly, breaking a silence filled only with the clink of silverware. I do, Lucia answered honestly. Especially Triceratops. All those horns must have been helpful for protection. Antonio's expression brightened slightly. T-Rex is better. He's the king. Kings are powerful, Lucia acknowledged, but sometimes it's better to have a good defense than a strong attack. Triceratops families protected each other. Like Papa protects me? The question was innocent but loaded with implications that made Lucia glance at Vincent. Exactly like that, she said carefully. Vincent's expression remained neutral, but something in his eyes shifted, approval, perhaps, or relief that she hadn't flinched from the reality of who he was. Papa says Mama is gone forever now, Antonio continued, his voice becoming smaller. Like gone, not just away gone like before. The simple, devastating question beneath his words was clear: who will love me now? Lucia felt her heart contract. This wasn't about a job offer or financial salvation. This was about a little boy standing at the edge of a void that she remembered all too well from her own childhood, the hollow space where a parent should be. That must feel very scary, she said softly, resisting the urge to touch him without permission. When my papa went away forever, I thought no one would ever understand me again. Antonio's solemn eyes met hers, recognition flashing between them, the silent language of those who've lost something irreplaceable. Did you cry? A lot, Lucia admitted. Sometimes I still do, even though I'm a grown-up now. Papa says crying is okay in private but not where people can see. Vincent's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Antonio. It's an understandable rule, Lucia interjected gently. But sometimes feelings are too big to keep private. The strongest people I know aren't afraid to show when they're sad. The challenge in her words hung between her and Vincent, an unspoken negotiation about more than just emotional expression. About what kind of household this would be, if she accepted his offer. After lunch, true to his earlier promise, Antonio led Lucia to a room that made her educational heart sing, a private library filled with books, learning materials, and a reading nook perfectly sized for a 5-year-old. As he proudly showed her his collection, Vincent watched from the doorway, his expression unreadable. This is my favorite, Antonio declared, pulling out a well-worn copy of Where the Wild Things Are. Papa reads it with the monster voices. Monster voices? Lucia glanced at Vincent, trying to imagine the imposing man making growling sounds. A hint of color touched Vincent's cheeks. Theatrical reading enhances comprehension. The unexpected glimpse of self-consciousness from such a powerful man made Lucia smile despite herself. He's absolutely right. Studies show that animated reading improves both vocabulary retention and emotional engagement with text. Antonio looked between them, sensing an alliance forming. His small fingers traced the book's cover. Mama used to read to me too. Before she went away the first time. The simple statement landed like a stone in still water, ripples of sadness expanding outward. Vincent's expression tightened, pain flashing across his features before disappearing behind his controlled mask. Would you like me to read it now? Lucia offered, recognizing the moment for what it was, a test, not just of her, but of the possibilities she represented. Antonio nodded, settling into the window seat. To her surprise, Vincent remained, leaning against the doorframe as she began to read. She didn't hold back, giving each wild thing its own voice, acting out Max's mischief with hand gestures that soon had Antonio giggling. When she reached the part where Max returns home to find his supper waiting, she noticed Vincent watching her with an intensity that had nothing to do with the story. After finishing, Antonio immediately requested another book, then another. Lucia lost track of time, immersed in the simple joy of connecting with a child through stories. When she finally looked up, Vincent had disappeared, and Antonio had fallen asleep against her shoulder, small face peaceful in a way that made her heart ache. The housekeeper, Elena, appeared silently. I'll take him for his nap, she whispered, expertly transferring the sleeping child without waking him. Mr. Castellano is waiting for you in the study. Vincent stood at the same window where she'd first found him, his back to the door as she entered. He doesn't fall asleep around strangers, he said without turning. Not since Sophia left. Children sense authenticity, Lucia replied. They know when someone genuinely cares about their feelings. And do you? Care about his feelings? Now he turned, his gaze searching her face. Or is this just about the financial arrangement? The question stung, but Lucia recognized its necessity. I cared about him before I knew there was any arrangement. That's why I'm here, to make sure whatever you're planning won't hurt him. And what about you, Lucia? What would this arrangement do to your life? She considered the question honestly. It would solve problems I've been fighting for years. My grandmother would get proper care. I could finish my degree without working myself to exhaustion. She paused. But it would also mean entering your world, with all its complications and dangers. It would mean becoming responsible for a child who's already experienced abandonment. You've thought this through. I've been thinking of nothing else since last night. Vincent nodded, something like respect flickering in his eyes. Most people see the money and stop thinking. You see the child first. That's why I want you here. I haven't said yes. But you will. It wasn't arrogance in his voice, but certainty born of observation. Not because of what I'm offering, but because of what you saw in that library. A child who needs exactly what you can give him. Lucia felt a flicker of irritation at his presumption, even as she recognized the truth in his words. If, and it's still if, I were to consider this, I would have conditions. Name them. My education comes first. I continue my program without interruption. Already accounted for in the contract. You'd have a private study and flexible hours. My grandmother visits here regularly, and I visit her. A car and driver would be at your disposal. Antonio's well-being is the priority in all decisions. That goes without saying. Lucia took a deep breath, reaching the most difficult condition. Your business stays completely separate from this house. No associates, no meetings, nothing that could expose Antonio to danger or inappropriate influences. Vincent's expression hardened slightly. My business is what provides the security and opportunities one wants for my son. I understand that. But children absorb everything around them. If I'm going to help raise him, I need to know he's not being shaped by certain elements of your world. A tense silence stretched between them. Lucia held her ground, though her heart hammered against her ribs. She was negotiating terms with a man who likely hadn't heard the word no in years. Finally, Vincent nodded once, decisively. My home has always been separate from business. It will remain so. You have my word. And your word means something? It's all I truly have, in the end. The simple statement carried unexpected weight. Ask anyone in this city, Vincent Castellano keeps his promises, for better or worse. Lucia looked down at the contract still in her hands, the path of her life diverging dramatically based on what she decided in this moment. I need time to think. Of course. Take the weekend. But Antonio asked if you'd come to the park with us tomorrow. A hint of vulnerability crept into his voice. He doesn't ask for much these days. The request felt like gentle manipulation, but Lucia couldn't deny the pull she already felt toward the solemn-eyed boy. What time? 10. There's a playground at Riverside he enjoys. As Lucia prepared to leave, Vincent handed her an envelope. Your grandmother's situation shouldn't influence your decision about Antonio. This will cover her care facility payments for the next 6 months, regardless of what you decide about the position. Lucia stared at the envelope, pride warring with desperate need. I can't accept that. You can and you will. His tone brooked no argument. Consider it an apology for investigating your personal circumstances without permission. That's not how apologies work, she said, but took the envelope nonetheless, the weight of her grandmother's security momentarily overwhelming her pride. I'm still learning, Vincent admitted with unexpected candor. About many things. The car he arranged returned her to her apartment building, the contrast between the gleaming black vehicle and the graffiti-covered entrance jarring. Her roommate Tasha was in the kitchen, eyes widening at Lucia's appearance. "Where have you been? And whose car is that outside?" "It's complicated," Lucia said, sinking into a chair at their small table. "Complicated like you're in trouble? Or complicated like you've got a secret rich boyfriend?" Tasha's expression shifted from curiosity to concern. "Seriously, Lou, what's going on?" Lucia stared at the envelope in her hands, then at the contract in her bag. How could she possibly explain what had happened in the last 24 hours? That she'd hugged a mafia boss and now was considering becoming a mother figure to his son? "I've been offered a job," she said finally. "As a live-in educational consultant for a wealthy family." "Live-in? You'd leave?" Tasha looked crestfallen. "But what about your classes? You're a grandmother?" "The position would include completing my degree. And better care for Abuela." Lucia rubbed her temples, the enormity of the decision pressing down on her. "It's an incredible opportunity, but..." "But what?" "Sounds perfect. The employer is complicated." Tasha's eyes narrowed. "Complicated how? Is this something illegal?" "Because you know my brother can help if you're in trouble." "No, nothing like that." Lucia hesitated. "Have you ever heard of Vincent Castellano?" Tasha's jaw dropped. "The Vincent Castellano? Waterfront Vincent? Make people disappear Vincent?" She lowered her voice to a whisper. "Are you out of your mind?" "Possibly," Lucia admitted. "But you should see his son, Tash. This little boy who's lost his mother and needs someone who understands that kind of pain." "So now you're going to be a mob wife?" "Lucia, this isn't a movie." "Not a wife. A caretaker, a teacher." Lucia shook her head. "I know how it sounds. But when I was with them today, I saw something beyond the reputation. A father trying to do right by his son, in his own way." Tasha grabbed Lucia's hands. "Listen to yourself. You're romanticizing a dangerous man because he has a cute kid and can solve your financial problems. This is exactly how women end up on true crime documentaries." The harsh assessment stung, but Lucia couldn't entirely dismiss it. Was she seeing clearly, or was desperation clouding her judgment? "I promise to meet them at the park tomorrow," she said. "Just to spend time with Antonio. After that, I'll decide." "At least let me come with you," Tasha pleaded. "As backup." "That would defeat the purpose. I need to see how they interact normally, how Antonio responds to me without an audience." Lucia squeezed her friend's hands. "But I'll text you the location and check in every hour, okay?" That night, Lucia lay awake, staring at her ceiling as scenarios played through her mind. She imagined herself in that beautiful brownstone, helping Antonio heal from his mother's abandonment and death, completing her degree without financial stress. She imagined her grandmother receiving proper care, perhaps even eventually moving into the brownstone's garden apartment Vincent had mentioned was available. Then she imagined darker possibilities, becoming entangled in Vincent's shadowy business dealings, witnessing things she couldn't unsee, Antonio growing up to follow in his father's footsteps despite her influence. "What am I doing?" she whispered to the darkness. Yet even as doubt plagued her, she remembered Antonio's face as he fell asleep against her shoulder, trusting and peaceful. She remembered Vincent's voice softening when he spoke to his son, the genuine love there unmistakable. Perhaps most disturbingly, she remembered how it had felt to be in that house, not just the luxury, but the strange sense of rightness, as if some part of her recognized a place where she belonged before her conscious mind could catch up. Morning arrived with no more clarity than the night had offered. Lucia dressed carefully in jeans and a simple sweater, practical for a playground but nicer than her usual weekend attire. The park was only 15 blocks from her apartment, and she decided to walk, using the time to clear her head. Riverside Park sprawled along the water, its playground nestled between ancient oaks whose leaves had turned brilliant gold and crimson. She spotted them immediately, Vincent in casual clothes that somehow still looked expensive, Antonio racing up a slide the wrong way, his laughter carrying across the crisp autumn air. They made a striking picture, the powerful man completely focused on his son, all business forgotten as he pretended to chase the giggling child around the equipment. No bodyguards visible, though Lucia suspected they weren't far away. Just a father and son enjoying a Saturday morning. Antonio saw her first, his small face lighting up with recognition. "Miss Lucia!" "Papa, look!" Vincent turned, and something in his expression shifted, relief, perhaps, that she had actually come. He raised a hand in greeting as Antonio raced toward her. "I can go all the way across the monkey bars now," the boy announced, grabbing her hand without hesitation. "Wanna see?" "Absolutely," Lucia replied, allowing herself to be pulled toward the playground. She glanced back at Vincent, who followed at a more measured pace, watching their interaction with careful attention. The next 2 hours passed in a blur of playground games, leaf collecting, and ice cream from a vendor despite the cool weather. Antonio's initial reserve had completely vanished, replaced by the natural exuberance of a 5-year-old who had found a willing playmate. He chattered about dinosaurs, his favorite cartoons, and the model airplane he was building with his father. "Papa says you might come live with us," he said suddenly as they sat on a bench, Vincent having stepped away to take a brief phone call. "Is that true?" Lucia chose her words carefully. "Your father offered me a job helping take care of you and teaching you." "I'm still thinking about it." Antonio nodded solemnly. "Elena takes care of me now. She's nice but she's old and doesn't like to play much." "Taking care of someone is more than playing, though," Lucia explained gently. "It's about helping them grow up strong and smart and kind. Like a mama does?" The question was innocent but pierced straight to the heart of the matter. "Some of those things, yes. But I wouldn't be your mama, Antonio. I'd be more like a teacher who lives with you." The boy considered this, his small face scrunched in concentration. "But you could read stories every night? And help with bad dreams?" "I could do those things." "And you wouldn't go away? Like Mama did?" The question caught her off guard, its simplicity masking the profound fear beneath. Before she could formulate a response, Vincent returned, his expression darkening as he caught the end of their conversation. "Antonio, why don't you try the swings while Miss Lucia and I talk?" he suggested, his tone gentle but firm. The boy nodded, running toward the swing set that stood within clear view of their bench. Vincent sat beside Lucia, his gaze following his son. "He's testing you," he said quietly. "Seeing if you'll make promises you can't keep. Like his mother did?" Vincent's jaw tightened. Sophia was complicated. Brilliant, beautiful, but ultimately unsuited for motherhood. She left when he was 3, returned briefly last year, then disappeared again. The overdose was probably accidental, but the result is the same. "I'm sorry," Lucia said, and meant it. "For both of you. I've made my peace with it. Antonio hasn't had that luxury." Vincent turned to face her directly. "Have you decided?" "I'm still weighing everything. This isn't just a job, Vincent. It's a complete life change. For all of us," he acknowledged. "I don't make this offer lightly, Lucia. Bringing someone into our home, into Antonio's life, the risk isn't just yours." The admission of vulnerability from such a powerful man struck her. You're afraid I'll leave too. That he'll get attached and I'll hurt him. The thought has occurred to me. Then why take the chance? Vincent's gaze returned to Antonio, who was pumping his legs on the swing, face tilted toward the sun. Because the alternative is worse. He needs someone who sees him, not my money, not my position, just him. In that restaurant, you saw me, not the reputation. It's a rare quality. A comfortable silence fell between them as they watched Antonio play. The simplicity of the moment, sun filtering through autumn leaves, a child's laughter, two adults contemplating a shared future, felt surreal given the circumstances that had brought them together. If I say yes, Lucia said finally, we'd need to establish clear boundaries. About my role, about your expectations, about how we present this arrangement to Antonio. Agreed. And I'd need my own space in the house. Somewhere I can study and have privacy. The East Wing has a suite that would suit you perfectly. Private bath, sitting room, study area. It connects to Antonio's rooms but has separate access to the main hallway. Lucia took a deep breath. One more condition. If at any point I feel this arrangement is harming Antonio rather than helping him, I need the freedom to say so without fear of consequences. Vincent's expression hardened momentarily before understanding dawned. You think I'd threaten you if you disagreed with my parenting? I don't know you, Vincent. Not really. Your reputation suggests you don't handle opposition well. To her surprise, a small smile touched his lips. Fair assessment. But in this, you have my word. Antonio's well-being comes first. Always. If you believe something I'm doing is harmful to him, I expect you to tell me, consequences be damned. The conviction in his voice resonated with something in Lucia, the recognition of a parent who, despite his flaws and dangerous world, truly wanted what was best for his child. Then yes, she heard herself say, the decision crystallizing even as the words left her mouth. I accept your offer. Relief washed over Vincent's features, quickly masked by his usual composure. You won't regret this, Lucia. Neither will Antonio. I hope not, she replied honestly. For all our sakes. The transition happened with surprising speed. Within a week, Lucia had moved into the brownstone, her meager possessions looking almost comical in the spacious suite Vincent had prepared for her. Her grandmother had been transferred to Lakeside Gardens, a facility so exclusive Lucia had previously only driven past its manicured grounds with wistful thinking. Antonio had helped her arrange her books on the built-in shelves, his excitement at having her there both heartwarming and slightly overwhelming. Vincent had given her space to settle in, their interactions polite but still cautious as they established the new dynamics of their household. The first real test came 3 nights after she moved in. A thunderstorm rattled the windows, lightning illuminating the unfamiliar shadows of her new room. Lucia had just drifted to sleep when a small knock at her door jolted her awake. Antonio stood in the doorway, clutching a stuffed dinosaur, his face pale in the dim light. The thunder is too loud, he whispered. Can I stay with you? Just until it stops? Lucia hesitated only briefly before nodding, moving over to make space in the large bed. Antonio climbed in, his small body curling against her side with the immediate trust of childhood. My mama didn't like storms either, he murmured sleepily. She used to hide in her room with the special medicine that made her sleep. Lucia's heart contracted at the casual revelation of what special medicine likely meant. Everyone gets scared sometimes, she said softly. Even grown-ups. The brave part is asking for help when you need it. Like Papa asked you to help us? The innocent observation startled her. Yes, she replied after a moment. Exactly like that. Antonio nodded against her shoulder, satisfied with the answer. I'm glad you said yes, he mumbled as sleep reclaimed him. You make the scary things not so scary. Tears pricked unexpectedly at Lucia's eyes as she smoothed his dark hair. In that moment, the enormity of what she'd undertaken hit her fully. This child was trusting her with his sense of security, his emotional well-being. The responsibility felt both terrifying and strangely right. Morning found them still asleep, Antonio's small hand clutching her sleeve. Lucia woke to find Vincent standing in the doorway, his expression unreadable as he took in the scene. The storm scared him, she explained softly, careful not to wake the boy. Vincent nodded once. He used to come to my room. I thought perhaps he'd stopped being afraid. Or perhaps he just found someone else he trusts to keep him safe, Lucia suggested gently. Something shifted in Vincent's eyes, not jealousy as she might have expected, but a complex mixture of relief and gratitude. Thank you, he said simply, before quietly closing the door. In the weeks that followed, they settled into an unexpected rhythm. Mornings were for breakfast together before Vincent left for his business dealings and Lucia took Antonio to the private school he attended. Afternoons were filled with homework, play, and the educational enrichment activities Lucia designed based on her studies. Evenings often found all three of them in the library, Antonio reading aloud while Vincent and Lucia listened, offering encouragement and gentle corrections. It was during one such evening, Antonio having been tucked into bed after 3 stories and numerous negotiations for just 5 more minutes, that Vincent poured 2 glasses of wine and handed one to Lucia. You've transformed him, he said quietly. His teachers say he's more engaged, more confident. Elena says he hasn't had a nightmare in 2 weeks. Lucia accepted the compliment with a small smile. He's an amazing child, Vincent. He just needed stability and someone to listen without judgment. Someone who understands loss, Vincent added, studying her over his glass. Like you do. We all understand loss in different ways. She met his gaze steadily. Even you. A moment of silence stretched between them, filled with unspoken recognition of the complex circumstances that had brought them together, a chance encounter, an impulsive hug, a decision that had altered 3 lives irrevocably. I never thanked you properly, Vincent said finally. For that moment in the restaurant. For seeing past what everyone thinks they know about me. I just responded to another human being in pain, Lucia replied. The rest. She gestured to the beautiful room around them, to the life she now led. The rest has been unexpected. The best things usually are. Vincent's voice had softened, the hardened businessman momentarily set aside. Like finding a family in the most unlikely place. The word hung between them, family. Not employer and employee, not convenient arrangement, but something deeper that had begun to take root in the quiet moments and shared laughter of their days together. As Lucia looked at Vincent across the warm glow of the library lamps, she realized with startling clarity that she no longer saw the feared Vincent Castellano of whispered rumors. She saw a father who read monster voices to make his son laugh, who checked homework with infinite patience, who was trying, imperfectly but sincerely, to create something precious from the broken pieces of his life. And perhaps most surprisingly, she saw a future unfolding that she had never imagined for herself, one where a simple act of compassion had opened the door to belonging, to purpose, to an unconventional family bound not by blood but by choice. Family, she echoed softly, raising her glass to his. To finding it in unexpected places. If you enjoyed this story about how compassion can bridge worlds and create unexpected connections, please hit the like button and subscribe to Serafina's Stories for more tales that explore the power of kindness and chosen family. Share in the comments a moment when an act of compassion, given or received, changed your life in ways you never expected. Until next time, remember that sometimes the most meaningful connections begin with the simplest human gestures.